I recorded this entire Dan Wootton update video, and then I realized that my video was going in a much more interesting direction, so this is take two. The investigation from Byline Times into Dan Wootton is not over, in which they basically said, "We'll be back. Soon you'll see. Dan, we didn't forget that you're creepy." More to come this month. They had an editorial out on August 18th, 2023, basically saying, we're not backing down. And as they have hinted at before, this is much larger than Dan. Peter Jukes, the co-founder of Byline Times, specifically says in this editorial that part of the reason that this is not getting more mainstream attention is that there are outlets that are historically complicit, and others might be afraid of what information Dan still has or about jeopardizing relationships with GB News. But I want to look back into the new crowdfunding website that Dan used to raise money for his legal fees, because this never made sense to me. Was Dan really just that desperate? But also, why this unknown crowdfunding site? As of right now, his goal is £150,000. He has raised £39,000. And thankfully, somebody smarter than myself looked into this crowdfunding site. In news that will shock no one, this crowdfunding site that was founded in 2021 has links to the UK's influential Christian right, including the notoriously secretive Legatum Institute think tank. Democracy 3.0 claims that they promote causes that help the common good. Dan and common good in the same sentence. Anyway, it's basically hard right stuff like, let's not teach sex education and trans people in bathrooms. But then there's this other very curious link. Directly from this article, quote, "Our investigation found Hawkins' link through another company to key Christian right figures, as well as a number of think tanks, most notably the pro-Brexit Legatum Institute, part of the Legatum Group network, which recently helped fund GB News to the tune of £60 million. The same GB News that employs Dan, who then turned around and crowdfunded through Democracy 3.0. There was all this talk about, did GB News know that Dan was going to go rogue and crowdfund for his legal fees? But maybe they knew about it and supported it and in some ways encouraged it all along. Because it seems a little too big of a coincidence that Dan would use this little known new crowdfunding site that also happens to have ties to the group that helped fund the place that he currently works for, which seems like this bigger push for what we're already seeing in America, which is this push towards alt-right Christian nationalism taking over our media and then infiltrating our government and our policy positions as a nation. Guys, it's not fun. Don't do it. Another notable figure that was canceled that also was asking for donations was ex-Tory MP Andrew Bridgen, who appeared on the channel after, quote, being kicked out of the Conservative Party after making comments comparing the COVID vaccine rollout to the Holocaust. End quote. Great rule of thumb if you're thinking about comparing something to the Holocaust is not comparing it to the Holocaust. Here's Andrew's campaign. He's suing the former health secretary over a tweet. And for this legal claim, he is trying to raise $250,000. He's 43% of the way there. And he claims that if he's successful, any damages awarded will be donated in full, bold, to support the seriously vaccine injured. But it goes into zero detail about what that actually looks like, how that would be paid out if it's a foundation. It doesn't give any other details. And it's a lot of money. This is a guy in the Conservative Party who knows mega wealthy donors. Why use this little known new crowdfunding website and not a legitimate, transparent, already set up one where it's crystal clear where the money is going, who is asking for the money, etc. And then there is the terms of use page. I do not know the ins and outs of every single crowdfunding site, but these few points stood out to me. First of all, if funds raised exceed £10,000, Democracy 3.0 will deduct 7% from the total amount raised. Is that the going rate? I do not know. But it did make me think that maybe some of the high dollar amounts that people are asking for is because it will put more money into Democracy 3.0's coffers, if there is a bigger goal at play. Maybe someone in finance can help me understand this. But then there's also, like, once you're ready to close a campaign, Democracy 3.0 will agree with the campaign creator to schedule, to select, appoint, and oversee professional campaign experts. This process will be led by Democracy 3.0 in consultation with campaign creators. The final decision and process to select, appoint, and manage professional campaign experts will be made by the Democracy 3.0 campaign team. What does that mean? Who is this team? Finally, 3.4. When monies have been raised to cover legal costs in the event that those monies are unspent, for example, because of settlement or legal win, Democracy 3.0 reserves the right to reallocate surplus net funds to other similar cases. How do they determine other similar cases? We don't know. There is something about this site that feels deeply unserious, but at the same time incredibly dangerous. Is this just like a front? Is it some way to get around issues of dark money or funneling money into different entities? Because it feels like people like Dan and that ex-Tory MP shouldn't have to resort to this kind of open, desperate plea on a website that's been around for less than 2 years. Math ain't mathin'. Did Dan really expect to raise the allotted money that he set his campaign for, or was it a way to soft promote this new crowdfunding organization? I think this is something we should keep an eye on. With all of the Dan Wootton information going on and his own personal scandals, I think we have to keep an eye on the bigger, larger structural issue at play. As I've said from the beginning, this is all so much bigger than Dan. Stay tuned for more.